The bass thrummed through the walls of the club, a physical force that seemed to vibrate through my ribcage with each pulsing beat. I pressed myself against the cold metal of the bathroom door, my heart hammering faster than the music outside. 3 deep breaths. That's all I needed. 3 deep breaths and I could go back out there, smile plastered across my face like everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. My phone buzzed in my clutch for the 15th time in the past hour. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Derek. Again. Always Derek. The messages had started innocent enough 3 months ago when we'd broken up. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. But they'd evolved into something darker, more insistent. Where are you? Who are you with? You can't just ignore me, Jesse. Except I could. I had to. I smoothed down the front of my dress, a simple black number that my roommate Maya had insisted I wear tonight. You need to get out there again, she'd said, applying her eyeliner with surgical precision. Derek doesn't own you. He never did. She was right, of course. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones were 2 entirely different things. The bathroom door burst open and Maya stumbled in, her usual composure slightly ruffled by champagne and the exertion of dancing. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Come on, there's this group of guys from downtown who want to buy us drinks. She grabbed my hand, her enthusiasm infectious despite my reluctance. I let her pull me back into the chaos of the main room. The club was packed tonight, bodies moving in synchronization to music that felt more like a heartbeat than a melody. Colored lights sliced through artificial fog, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that made everything feel simultaneously more real and less so. That's when I saw him. Derek stood near the bar, his eyes scanning the crowd with a predatory focus I recognized all too well. He hadn't seen me yet, but it was only a matter of time. The club suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in despite the cavernous space. My breath caught in my throat. Maya, I hissed, tugging on her arm. Derek's here. She followed my gaze and her expression hardened. That obsessive piece of work. I told you we should have filed a restraining order. You can't file a restraining order because someone texts too much. You can when those texts are threatening. Were they threatening? Sometimes I couldn't tell anymore. Derek had a way of making everything sound like concern, like love, like he was the victim of my cruel distance. But there was always an undercurrent, a suggestion of something darker lurking beneath his words. He turned, and our eyes met across the crowded room. Even from this distance, I could see his expression change. Recognition, then something else. Possession, determination. He started moving through the crowd toward me. We need to go, I said, panic rising in my chest. But Maya was already pulling me in the opposite direction, weaving through the dancers toward the VIP section in the back. Follow my lead, she said over her shoulder. The VIP area was elevated slightly, separated from the main floor by velvet ropes and the kind of intimidating security that made it clear who belonged and who didn't. Maya had connections through her job at a marketing firm, and she flashed a smile at the bouncer who nodded us through without question. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The music was still loud, but somehow more controlled. The lighting was dimmer, more intimate. Groups of well-dressed people lounged on leather couches, their faces half hidden in shadow and cigarette smoke. I glanced back toward the entrance. Derek had reached the rope, but the bouncer was shaking his head, arms crossed. Relief flooded through me, making my knees weak. See? Maya said, pressing a drink into my hand. Safe. Now let's actually enjoy ourselves. I tried. I really did. I let Maya introduce me to her work friends, smiled and nodded at their stories, pretended the vodka in my glass wasn't making my stomach turn. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the awareness of Derek somewhere out there, waiting. An hour passed, then another. Maya disappeared with a guy from her office, promising she'd be back in 15 minutes. I found myself alone on one of the couches, nursing my second drink and contemplating whether it was safe to leave yet. That's when Derek found me. I don't know how he got past security. Maybe he talked his way through, or slipped the bouncer cash, or simply waited until they were distracted. But suddenly he was there, standing in front of me with that familiar smile that no longer looked charming but rather calculated. "Hey, Jess," he said, sitting down beside me without invitation. Too close. Always too close. "Fancy seeing you here?" "Derek." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You need to leave me alone. We need to talk. You've been ignoring my messages. Because we broke up 3 months ago, there's nothing left to talk about." His hand found my knee, fingers pressing in just slightly too hard to be casual. "Don't be like that. What we had was special. You know that. I know that. We just need to work through this rough patch." "There's no rough patch. It's over." His grip tightened, and I saw something flash in his eyes. Anger, barely controlled. "You can't just decide that on your own. Relationships require 2 people. I tried to pull away, but his other hand caught my wrist, not violently, but firmly. The kind of hold that looked affectionate from a distance but felt like a trap up close. "Let go of me," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Not until you listen." My heart was pounding now, genuine fear replacing my earlier anxiety. The VIP section had emptied somewhat, and those who remained were lost in their own worlds, their own conversations. No one was paying attention to us. No one would intervene. Panic made me desperate, and desperation made me reckless. My eyes landed on a man sitting alone in the corner, partially hidden in shadow. He was watching us, I realized. Had been watching for the past few seconds with an intensity that should have frightened me, but instead felt like possibility. He was striking in a way that made you look twice. Dark hair styled with casual precision, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He wore a tailored black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing tattoos that disappeared beneath the fabric. Without thinking, without planning, I stood abruptly and walked directly to him. "Sorry I'm late," I said loudly enough for Derek to hear, my voice bright with forced familiarity. Traffic was insane. The stranger's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but before he could respond, before Derek could react, I bent down and pressed my lips to his. It was meant to be quick, performative, a desperate ploy to convince Derek I'd moved on. But the moment our mouths met, something shifted. His lips were warm and firm, and for a heartbeat he remained frozen. Then his hand came up to cup the back of my head, fingers threading through my hair, and he kissed me back. Actually, kissed me back. Not the chaste brush of lips I'd intended, but something deeper, more consuming. His mouth moved against mine with a confidence that made my breath catch, made me forget for a moment that this was a stranger, that I was using him, that Derek was watching. When we finally broke apart, I was breathing hard, my lips tingling. The stranger's dark eyes were fixed on mine, unreadable and intense. Then he looked past me, to where Derek still stood by the couch, and something in his expression changed. Hardened. "Who's your friend?" he asked, his voice low and carrying an accent I couldn't quite place. Not Italian, but something close. Mediterranean, perhaps. "He's no one," I said quickly. "Just someone who can't take a hint." "I see." The stranger stood, and I was struck by how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space around us. He looked at Derek, and his next words were casual, but edged with steel. "I think the lady would like you to leave." Derek's face had gone red, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "This doesn't concern you. Jesse and I are having a private conversation." "Jesse," the stranger repeated, as if testing my name on his tongue. His hand found the small of my back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric of my dress. "Is that true? Do you want to continue your conversation with him?" I should have said yes, should have thanked him and walked away, found Maya, gone home. But something in the way he said my name, the way his touch made me feel simultaneously protected and claimed, made me shake my head. "No, I want him to leave." The stranger smiled then, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who'd just been given permission to strike. He looked back at Derek, and though I couldn't see his face, I saw Derek's reaction. The other man actually took a step back, his bravado crumbling. "You heard her," the stranger said softly. "Leave, and don't come back." For a moment, I thought Derek might argue, might push back the way he always did. But something in the stranger's demeanor, some unspoken threat in his posture, made Derek turn and walk away. Not confidently, but quickly, disappearing back into the main crowd. I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, my whole body suddenly shaking with adrenaline and relief. "Thank you," I managed. "I'm sorry I just grabbed you like that. I didn't know what else to do." The stranger turned back to me, and his expression had softened slightly, though his eyes remained intense. "Don't apologize. I'm Jackson. Jesse." Then I laughed, slightly hysterical. "But you already know that." "Come," he said, guiding me back to his secluded corner. "Sit. You're shaking." I let him lead me, sinking onto the leather couch that was still warm from where he'd been sitting. He signaled a waitress who appeared instantly, and moments later, a glass of water was pressed into my trembling hands. "Drink," Jackson instructed, and I obeyed. The water was cold and helped clear my head slightly. Reality was starting to reassert itself, and with it came embarrassment. "I really am sorry. That was completely inappropriate. He wouldn't leave me alone, and I panicked." "Ex-boyfriend?" "Ex-something. I'm not sure he ever qualified as a boyfriend in the traditional sense." I took another sip of water. "He's been harassing me since we broke up. Tonight he scared me." Jackson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He should be scared. Men who frighten women deserve to learn what fear truly feels like. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. This wasn't just chivalry. There was a darkness there, a promise of violence that should have frightened me, but instead made me feel inexplicably safe. "Well, he's gone now," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Thanks to you and your very convincing performance." His lips curved into a half smile, and his eyes held mine. "Who said I was performing?" Heat flooded my cheeks. Before I could respond, his hand reached up and his thumb brushed across my lower lip, so gentle it almost tickled. "You have good instincts," he said quietly. "Choosing me. It was random. You were just there." "Nothing is random, Jesse." The way he said my name, with that slight accent, made it sound like something precious. "You came to me because somewhere instinctively you knew I could protect you. And you were right. I should have made an excuse and left. Should have found Maya and gotten out of this club, away from this dangerously attractive stranger who looked at me like he was already planning our future. But I didn't move. Couldn't move. I should go find my friend," I said, but made no effort to stand. "Should you?" Jackson leaned closer, his scent washing over me. Something expensive and masculine, cedar and smoke. "Or should you stay here with me, where you're safe? I don't even know you. You kissed me. That was fake. Was it? His eyes dropped to my lips again. Because it didn't feel fake. My phone buzzed in my clutch, breaking the spell. I pulled it out, expecting Maya. Instead, it was a message from an unknown number. You think some random guy can protect you? This isn't over. Jesse, it's never going to be over. My hands started shaking again. Jackson plucked the phone from my fingers before I could protest, reading the message. His expression turned to stone. Your ex? I nodded, unable to speak past the fear clogging my throat. Jackson's thumb moved across my phone screen with practiced ease. He typed something, then showed it to me. Yes, it is over. Touch her again and learn the consequences. He hit send before I could stop him. You shouldn't have done that, I whispered. You'll just make him angrier. Good. Jackson set my phone down and took both of my hands in his grip warm and steady. Let him be angry. Let him try something. I promise you, Jesse, no one will ever hurt you again. Not him, not anyone. The certainty in his voice should have sounded arrogant, delusional even. But looking into his eyes, I believed him. This stranger who I'd kissed in a moment of desperation had just claimed me as his own, and the terrifying part was how much I wanted to let him. Who are you? I asked, because men didn't make promises like that unless they had the power to keep them. Jackson smiled, and it was beautiful and terrifying all at once. I'm yours now. That's all you need to know tonight. I didn't leave the club with Jackson that night, though every instinct screamed at me to do exactly that. Maya found me 20 minutes later, apologetic and slightly drunk, and insisted we share an Uber home. I gave Jackson my number before leaving, my hands still trembling slightly as I typed it into his phone. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, and it wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, as certain as gravity. The next morning arrived with harsh sunlight and a pounding headache that had nothing to do with alcohol. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying the kiss over and over, the feel of Jackson's hand in my hair, the way he'd looked at Derek like he was already planning how to eliminate a problem. My phone rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Unknown number, but I knew who it was before I answered. Good morning, Jesse. Jackson's voice was smooth, alert, carrying none of the grogginess I felt. Did you sleep well? Not really, I admitted, padding into my tiny kitchen to start coffee. Last night was intense. It was necessary. Has he contacted you again? No. Not since your message. I poured water into the coffee maker, watching it drip through with unusual focus. Look, Jackson, I appreciate what you did, really. But you don't have to keep checking on me. I can handle Derek. Silence stretched between us for a moment. Then, can you? The question wasn't accusatory. It was genuine, and it made me pause. Could I handle Derek? I'd been trying for 3 months, and he was only getting worse. I'm working on it, I said finally. Let me help you work on it. Have lunch with me today. I have to work. Where? I hesitated. Something in my gut warned me against giving this stranger too much information, even as another part of me desperately wanted to trust him. At a consulting firm downtown, administrative work. What time is your lunch break? 1 o'clock. Perfect. I'll pick you up at 12:45. There's a place nearby I think you'll like. Jackson, I can't just leave for lunch with someone I met last night. You can, and you will. His tone was gentle but unyielding. Because we both know Derek isn't going to stop with text messages. And we both know you're scared. You don't have to be scared anymore, Jesse. Not with me. He hung up before I could argue further, leaving me staring at my phone in a mixture of frustration and something that felt dangerously close to anticipation. Work passed in a blur of spreadsheets and email chains that required minimal brain power. My cubicle was identical to 30 others on the floor, a beige box with barely enough room for my computer and a small plant that was slowly dying despite my best efforts. My coworker Sarah stopped by mid-morning with gossip about the office manager's affair, but I could barely focus on her words. At 12:43, my phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. I'm outside. I grabbed my purse and made my way to the elevator, my heart pounding with each descending floor. What was I doing? This was insane. You didn't just go to lunch with dangerous-looking strangers who kissed like they owned you. Except that's exactly what I was doing. The lobby doors opened onto a busy downtown street, and there he was. Jackson leaned against a sleek black car that looked like it cost more than my annual salary, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal shirt that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, which it probably had been. He straightened when he saw me, and that same intensity from last night blazed in his eyes, like I was the only person on the crowded sidewalk, like the world had narrowed to just the two of us. You came, he said, and I heard genuine relief in his voice. I'm here for 1 hour. That's it. 1 hour is more than enough time to start. He opened the passenger door for me, his hand finding the small of my back in that now familiar gesture as I slid into the leather seat. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and leather. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. Jackson got in beside me, and suddenly the spacious car felt intimate, charged with an energy I couldn't name. Where are we going? I asked as he pulled smoothly into traffic. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. He glanced at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I need to tell you some things, Jesse. Things you need to know to stay safe. Safe from Derek? From everyone. The restaurant was tucked away on a quiet street in a neighborhood I'd never explored. No sign marked the entrance, just a plain black door with a subtle gold number. Jackson placed his hand on my lower back again as we entered, guiding me through a dim hallway that opened into an unexpectedly beautiful space. Exposed brick walls, soft lighting, tables set far enough apart that conversations remained private. A server appeared immediately, greeting Jackson by name and leading us to a corner table that offered a view of the entire restaurant while keeping us partially hidden from other diners. You come here often, I observed once we were seated. I own it. Of course he did. I studied the menu, noting prices that made my eyes widen. This was the kind of place where expense accounts came to die. Order whatever you want, Jackson said, watching me with that unsettling focus. Money isn't a concern. What do you do? I asked, setting down the menu. For a living, I mean. I manage investments, acquisitions, properties. He paused, and his next words were weighted with meaning. I protect what's mine. And what's yours? His eyes locked on mine. As of last night, you are. I should have laughed. Should have told him he was insane, that you couldn't claim a person after one desperate kiss in a nightclub. But the way he said it, with absolute conviction, made my protests die in my throat. You don't even know me, I whispered. I know enough. I know you're strong enough to use a stranger as a shield when you're frightened. I know you're brave enough to show up here despite every instinct telling you to run. I know the way you kiss, the way you taste, the little sound you made in the back of your throat when I pulled you closer. He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. And I know that no one has ever made you feel as safe as I do. Am I wrong? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to maintain some sense of independence, of self-preservation, but I couldn't lie to him. No, you're not wrong. Something triumphant flashed in his eyes. The server returned, and Jackson ordered for both of us without consulting the menu. White wine, pasta, things I'd never tried, but that sounded expensive and complicated. Tell me about Derek, he said once we were alone again. Everything. So I did. The words spilled out like I'd been waiting for someone to ask, to actually listen. I told him about meeting Derek at a work conference, how charming he'd been at first, how the charm had slowly revealed itself as control, the constant texts, the surprise visits to my apartment, the way he'd isolated me from friends under the guise of wanting me all to himself. I broke up with him 3 months ago, I said, taking a sip of the wine that had appeared without me noticing. And he's been getting progressively worse ever since. Showing up at places I go, calling from different numbers when I block him. Last night was the first time he'd gotten physical, though. The first time I was actually scared he might hurt me. Jackson's jaw had grown tighter with each detail, his hands clenched on the table. Where does he work? Some tech startup in Brooklyn. Why? Because I'm going to make sure he never bothers you again. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. Jackson, you can't just threaten someone because they're harassing your... What am I to you exactly? You're mine. He said it simply, like it explained everything. And I protect what's mine, absolutely. Derek made a mistake touching you. He's going to understand that mistake very clearly. This is crazy. We barely know each other. You can't just decide I'm yours. I already have. He reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The moment you kissed me, you made a choice. Maybe you didn't realize it, but I did. You chose me, Jesse. You chose my protection. And I don't give up what I claim. Food arrived. Plates of pasta that looked almost too beautiful to eat. I picked up my fork with my free hand, Jackson still holding the other, and took a bite. It was incredible. Flavors I couldn't even begin to name exploding on my tongue. How did you find out where I work? I asked suddenly, the question occurring to me mid-bite. Jackson's expression didn't change. I have resources. That's not an answer. No, it's not. He released my hand to begin eating, but his eyes never left mine. I won't lie to you, Jesse. I'm not a good man. I don't play by normal rules. When I want something, I get it. When I need information, I find it. You deserve to know that before this goes any further. Before what goes any further. Us. This. Whatever you want to call it. He set down his fork, his full attention on me. I saw you across that club last night, even before you came to me. I watched you for 20 minutes, trying to figure out why I couldn't look away. Then you walked up to me, kissed me, and I knew. You were meant to be mine. People don't belong to other people, don't they? He tilted his head, considering. You're a romantic, I think. You believe in equality, in partnerships, in two people choosing each other every day. And those are beautiful ideals. But they're not reality. Not for people like me. People like you. People who take what they want and destroy anything that threatens it. He said it matter-of-factly, without pride or shame. I'm giving you honesty, Jesse, because you deserve that much. I will never lie to you. But I will also never let you go. So you need to decide right now if you can live with that. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run, to get out before I got in too deep. But another part, a part I hadn't known existed until last night, was drawn to his darkness like a moth to flame. What if I say no? I asked quietly. Then I'll drive you back to work, and you'll never see me again. His eyes held mine. But you'll still be alone with Derek, still looking over your shoulder, still afraid. And if I say yes, then you'll never be afraid again. Derek will disappear from your life completely. You'll have everything you need, everything you want. And in return, you'll be mine. Completely. Exclusively. Mine. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with promise and threat. I need to think about this, I said, though my mind was already made up, had been made up the moment he kissed me back last night. Of course, Jackson's smile was knowing, like he could read my thoughts. Think about it. But Jesse, while you're thinking, know that I'm already working to keep you safe. Whether you accept me or not, Derek won't bother you anymore. What are you going to do to him? Nothing permanent, just a conversation. A very clear conversation about boundaries and consequences. We finished lunch with lighter conversation. He asked about my work, my family, my dreams. I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, drawn out by his intense focus and genuine interest. Or maybe by the wine that kept appearing in my glass. By the time he dropped me back at work, I was 45 minutes late from lunch and didn't care. My boss would be furious, but Jackson's parting words made it not matter. Think about my offer, he said, kissing my hand in a gesture that should have felt old-fashioned, but instead felt possessive. I'll give you until tomorrow. Then I'm coming to collect my answer. I floated through the rest of the workday in a daze. Sarah commented that I looked different, glowing, and I couldn't argue. Everything felt different now. The world had shifted on its axis, and I was still trying to find my balance. My phone buzzed at 5:30, just as I was packing up to leave. A photo message from an unknown number. But I recognized the scene immediately. It was Derek, sitting in what looked like a parking garage, blood streaming from his nose, terror written across his features. No words accompanied the image, just the photo and a second message. He understands now. You're safe. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Jackson had done this, had found Derek, hurt him, made him pay for scaring me. I should have been horrified. Should have called the police, reported this violence. Instead, I felt safe. For the first time in 3 months, I felt completely, utterly safe. A third message arrived. Tomorrow, Jesse. I'll be waiting for your answer. I typed back before I could stop myself. You already know what my answer will be. His response was immediate. Say it anyway. I want to hear you choose me. I hesitated only a moment before typing the words that would change everything. Yes, I choose you. The reply came seconds later, and I could almost hear the satisfaction in his voice. Good girl. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pack a bag. You're moving in with me. I should have protested, should have said he was moving too fast, that I needed more time. But I didn't, because somewhere deep inside, I knew Jackson was right. I had chosen him the moment I kissed him. Everything since had been inevitable. I just hadn't realized I was choosing forever. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in my cramped bedroom, staring at the water-stained ceiling, my half-packed duffel bag sitting accusingly in the corner. Every rational thought I'd ever had was screaming at me to call this off, to text Jackson and tell him I'd made a mistake, that I needed more time. But I didn't. Because for the first time since Derek had started his campaign of psychological warfare, I'd slept without checking the locks 3 times, without startling at every sound in the hallway, without my phone clutched in my hand, ready to dial 911 at the first sign of trouble. Jackson had done that. One conversation, one photo of Derek's bloodied face, and the fear that had been my constant companion simply evaporated. Maya knocked on my door at 6 a.m, coffee in hand and concern written across her face. Okay, spill. You've been weird since you got home yesterday. I took the coffee gratefully, buying myself a moment. I'm leaving. Leaving? Like the apartment? Jesse, if this is about rent, we can figure something out. My promotion came through. I can cover more until you... Not the apartment. Well, yes, the apartment. But it's not about money. I took a sip of coffee, burning my tongue. I'm moving in with someone. Maya's eyes went wide. The guy from the club? The hot, mysterious one who made Derek actually run away? She sat down on my bed, studying my face. Jesse, you met him 2 days ago. I know. That's insane. You don't move in with someone after 2 days. You barely know him. I know he makes me feel safe. I know he's already done more to protect me than anyone else ever has. I set down the coffee, wrapping my arms around myself. Maya, I can't explain it, but this feels right in a way nothing else has. She was quiet for a long moment, her expression cycling through disbelief, concern, and finally reluctant understanding. He's dangerous, isn't he? Not to you, but in general. That kind of dangerous. I nodded slowly. And you're choosing him anyway. Yes. Maya reached out and squeezed my hand. Then at least promise me you'll keep your phone on, and that you'll call me if anything feels wrong. Because Jesse, if this guy turns out to be another Derek, he's not. I said it with absolute certainty. He's the opposite of Derek. Derek wanted to own me through fear. Jackson. I struggled to find the words. Jackson wants to own me through devotion. There's a difference. I really hope you're right. She pulled me into a hug, and I held on tight, suddenly aware that I was leaving behind the only real friend I had in this city. Text me every day, even if it's just an emoji. I need to know you're okay. I promise. Jackson arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, as promised. I watched from my window as the same sleek black car from yesterday pulled up to my building. He got out, and even from 3 floors up, I could see how he commanded the space around him. People on the street gave him a wide berth without seeming to realize they were doing it, like they sensed something predatory and instinctively created distance. My intercom buzzed. I'm here, was all he said. I grabbed my duffel bag, suddenly aware of how pathetically small it was. 1 bag. That's all I had to show for 26 years of life. Some clothes, a few books, my laptop. Everything else was Maya's, or came with the furnished apartment. The hallway felt longer than usual as I walked to the stairs. Maya stood in our doorway, watching me go with tears in her eyes but a brave smile on her face. Be happy, she called after me. You deserve to be happy. Jackson was waiting in the lobby, looking impossibly put together in another perfectly tailored shirt and dark jeans that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His eyes swept over me, taking in my simple sweater and leggings, the worn duffel bag, and something softened in his expression. Is that everything? He asked gently. I don't have much. You will. He took the bag from me, his fingers brushing mine in a way that sent electricity up my arm. I'll give you everything. The car ride started in silence, comfortable and charged at the same time. We headed north, away from my neighborhood, and into areas where the buildings grew taller and more expensive. Doormen appeared. Trees lined pristine sidewalks. The city transformed block by block into something I'd only ever seen in movies. Tell me about your family, Jackson said eventually, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the center console between us. There's not much to tell. Small town in Ohio, parents who wanted me to stay and marry local. I wanted more than that. I watched the buildings slide past. We don't talk much anymore. They think I'm throwing my life away in the city. Are you close? No, not since I left. The old hurt flared briefly. They wanted me to be someone I wasn't. To be small and satisfied with small things. You're not small. Jackson's hand moved from the console to my thigh, warm and possessive. You're magnificent. They just couldn't see it. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I changed the subject. What about you? Do you have family? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I did. Once. I'm sorry. Don't be. They made their choices. I made mine. He glanced at me, and something in his eyes made me shiver. Family is who you choose, Jesse. Blood means nothing if there's no loyalty behind it. We pulled into an underground garage of a building that screamed wealth. The parking level alone was nicer than my entire apartment building, with polished concrete floors and soft lighting that made the luxury cars look like art installations. Jackson's penthouse occupied the entire top floor. The elevator required both a key card and a fingerprint scan to access, security measures that should have concerned me, but instead made me feel protected. The doors opened directly into his space, and I stepped out into a world I'd only seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The sun was still rising, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. The space was open concept, modern furniture in blacks and grays providing stark contrast to the light pouring in. Abstract art covered the walls, pieces I suspected were originals worth more than most people's houses. "This is your home?" I asked stupidly, because obviously it was. "Our home now." Jackson set my duffel bag down and came to stand beside me at the windows. "I want you to be comfortable here. If there's anything you need, anything you want changed, just tell me." I wouldn't even know where to start. I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how out of place I looked in this polished space. "Jackson, I can't afford to live here. I can't even afford to breathe air this expensive." "You don't need to afford anything. I told you I take care of what's mine." His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "Let me take care of you, Jesse. Let me give you everything you've been denied." "I don't need everything. I just need to feel safe." "You'll have both." He leaned down, and I thought he might kiss me. But instead, his lips brushed my forehead in a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. "Come, let me show you the rest." The tour was overwhelming. Guest rooms I'd never use, a kitchen that looked like something from a cooking show, a library with leather chairs and walls of books, a home office that was off limits according to Jackson's casual mention. And finally, the master bedroom. It was enormous, dominated by a bed that could easily fit 4 people. More floor-to-ceiling windows, though these had automated blinds that Jackson demonstrated with a remote. A bathroom larger than my old bedroom featured a shower with jets coming from every direction, and a tub that was practically a small pool. "I had some things brought up for you," Jackson said, opening the walk-in closet. One side was filled with his clothes, expensive suits and casual wear, organized with military precision. The other side, previously empty, now held dresses, pants, shirts, all in my size with tags still attached. "Until you tell me your preferences," I had my assistant guess. "If anything doesn't fit or isn't your style, we'll replace it." I ran my hand along a silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire current wardrobe. "You did this overnight?" "I told you, I have resources." He came to stand behind me, his hand settling on my waist. "I want you to have everything you need to feel at home here." "I don't need expensive clothes to feel at home." "No. You need to know you're safe, you're wanted, and you're valued." His breath was warm against my ear. "The clothes are just a tangible way of showing you that I see you, Jesse. I see what you need and I provide it. That's how this works." I turned in his arms, having to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "What do you need from me? You're giving me all of this. But what do I give you?" "Everything." His hand came up to cup my jaw, and the intensity in his eyes made my knees weak. "Your trust, your presence, your smiles, your tears, your fears, your joys. I want all of it, every piece of you." "That's not fair exchange. You're giving me material things. I'm giving you my entire self." "Material things mean nothing to me. I can buy anything." His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught. "But I can't buy you, Jesse. I can't buy the way you look at me, the way you chose me that night despite your fear. That's priceless. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice." He kissed me then, and it was different from the desperate kiss in the club. This was thorough, claiming, a promise made with lips and tongue and the press of his body against mine. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "I need to tell you some things," he said, his voice rougher than before. "About who I am, what I do. You deserve the truth before this goes further." We moved to the living room, settling on the massive sectional that faced the windows. Jackson poured us both coffee from a pot that had appeared on the counter while we'd been in the bedroom, and I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to hold on to. "My name is Jackson Moretti," he began, and the Italian surname finally clicked the accent into place. "My family has been in New York for 4 generations, building an empire that spans real estate, shipping, and various other investments." "Legal investments?" I asked quietly. "Some of them, not..." He didn't look away from me, didn't try to soften the truth. "My family operates in gray areas. We do what's necessary to protect our interests and our people. I won't pretend to be something I'm not, Jesse. I've hurt people. I've made decisions that most would consider immoral. But I've never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it, and I've never broken my word. I should have been frightened, should have stood up and walked out, but I'd known, hadn't I? From the moment I saw how Derek reacted to him, how he commanded every space he entered. Men like Jackson didn't become powerful through legitimate means alone. "The night we met," I said slowly, "you were there for business, weren't you? Not just to relax." He nodded. "The club is one of my properties. I was meeting with someone about a deal, and then I saw you, and business stopped mattering." "Does Derek know who you are? What you are?" "He does now." Jackson's smile was cold. I made sure he understood exactly what happens to people who threaten what belongs to me. "I'm not a possession. No. You're infinitely more valuable than a possession." He set down his coffee and took my hands. "Possessions can be replaced. You can't. That's why I'll protect you with everything I have. That's why anyone who tries to hurt you will learn what it means to cross me." A shiver ran through me that wasn't entirely from fear. There was something darkly romantic about his devotion, his absolute certainty that I was worth protecting at any cost. "What happened to your family?" I asked. "You said you had family once." Pain flickered across his face, there and gone so quickly I almost missed it. "My parents were killed when I was 17. Car accident, or that's what the police said. I knew better. A rival family had been making moves on our territory. The accident was too convenient, too perfectly timed. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made sure justice was served." His expression hardened. "Every single person involved in their deaths learned what it means to take something from me. I was methodical about it. Took me 3 years to track them all down, to make them pay. You killed them." It wasn't a question. Yes. No hesitation, no remorse. And I'd do it again. They took my family, so I took everything from them. That's how this world works, Jesse. You protect your own, and you destroy anyone who threatens them. I should have been horrified. Should have seen the red flags waving frantically in front of me. But all I could think was that this was a man who understood loss, who understood the depths of devotion and the price of betrayal. "Why me?" I asked. "You could have anyone. Women who are more beautiful, more sophisticated, more suited to your world. Beauty and sophistication can be bought." He pulled me closer, until I was practically in his lap. "But the way you looked at me that night, the trust in your eyes when you kissed me despite not knowing me, that's rare, Jesse. That's precious. You saw something in me worth trusting, and I've spent my whole life making people fear me. You offered me something I didn't know I was missing." "What's that?" the chance to be seen as a protector instead of a threat. His hand stroked through my hair, gentle, despite the violence I knew it was capable of. I'm tired of being feared. I want to be wanted. And you want me, don't you? Despite everything I've told you. I did. God help me, I did. Yes. Then let me worship you the way you deserve. Let me give you a life without fear, without struggle. Let me be the monster in the shadows who keeps all the other monsters away from you. And what do I become in return? Your kept woman? Your pretty prisoner? My equal, he said it fiercely. My partner. My reason for being. You think I'm giving you things, but Jesse, you're giving me purpose. Before you, I had power and money and nothing worth protecting. Now I have everything. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that this dangerous, beautiful man saw something in me worth treasuring. But doubt nagged at the edges of my thoughts. What if I want to leave someday? What if this doesn't work? His expression turned serious. I won't lie to you. If you try to leave, I'll do everything in my power to convince you to stay. I'll remind you of every reason you chose me. I'll prove over and over that no one will ever love you the way I do. He paused, and his next words were careful. But if you truly want to go, if being with me makes you unhappy, I'll let you. Because keeping you prisoner would destroy what makes you beautiful. Your spirit, your fire. I want you willing, Jesse. Always willing. It was the answer I needed. Not a promise of freedom, because that would have been a lie. But honesty about what this was, what he was. A man who would fight to keep me, but wouldn't break me in the process. Okay, I whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll stay. I'll try this, whatever this is. The smile that broke across his face was devastating in its genuine joy. He pulled me fully into his lap, arms wrapped around me like he'd never let go, and kissed me until I forgot every doubt I'd ever had. When we finally broke apart, breathless and tangled together on the couch, Jackson rested his forehead against mine. You won't regret this. I promise you, Jesse. I'll spend every day proving that you made the right choice. I hope so, I said, because I just gave up my entire life for you. No. He pulled back to look at me, his eyes intense and warm. You didn't give up your life. You started living it, and I'm going to make sure every moment is worth it. The first week living with Jackson passed in a strange blur of luxury and adjustment. I woke each morning in sheets that felt like silk against my skin, the city spread out below us like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Jackson was attentive in ways I'd never experienced, anticipating needs I didn't know I had. Coffee appeared on the nightstand before I was fully awake. Meals materialized at perfect intervals, prepared by a chef who came and went so quietly I barely noticed his presence. My closet filled with more clothes, each piece somehow exactly my style, despite me never voicing preferences. How do you know? I asked one morning, holding up a sweater in my favorite shade of forest green. What I like, I mean. Jackson looked up from his tablet, dressed for work in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. I pay attention. You linger on certain colors when we pass store windows. Your eyes light up at specific styles. I just provide what makes you happy. It should have felt invasive, this level of observation. Instead, it felt like being truly seen for the first time in my life. But there were rules, I discovered. Unspoken at first, then gradually made clear through gentle corrections and firm insistences. I couldn't leave the building without telling him where I was going. For safety, he said, and after Derek, I couldn't argue the logic. The security team needed to know my location in case something happened. I couldn't go back to my old job. You don't need to work, Jackson had said when I brought it up on day 3, and I won't have you in an environment I can't control, not when there are people who might use you to get to me. People like who? I'd asked. His expression had darkened. I have enemies, Jesse. Men who would hurt you just to hurt me. Until I'm certain you're secure, you stay where I can protect you. So my days became strange exercises in beautiful captivity. I had everything I could want materially, but my world had shrunk to the penthouse and occasionally the building's private gym or rooftop garden, always with security hovering at a discreet distance. Maya texted constantly, worried messages I answered with careful cheerfulness. Yes, I was fine. Yes, Jackson was treating me well. No, I didn't regret my choice. All true, technically, even if the whole truth was more complicated. On day 8, everything changed. I was reading in the library when Jackson came home early, his expression tight with barely controlled anger. He was on his phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone, his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. When he saw me, something in his posture shifted, the tension bleeding out slightly. He ended the call and came to me, pulling me up from the chair and into his arms. His embrace was almost crushing, his face buried in my hair as he breathed deeply. "What's wrong?" I asked against his chest, feeling his heart racing. "Nothing you need to worry about." But his voice was strained, and when he pulled back, his eyes were haunted. "Business complications. They'll be handled. Jackson, I need you to do something for me." His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones. "I need you to stay in the penthouse for the next few days. No rooftop garden, no gym. Just here, where I know you're completely safe." Fear spiked through me. "What kind of complications?" He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell me. "Someone is challenging my territory, making moves they shouldn't be making. It's nothing I haven't handled before, but until it's resolved, I need to know you're secure." "Are you in danger?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm always in danger, Kara. It's the nature of my life, but I'm very good at surviving." "That's not reassuring." "It should be. I've survived this long because I'm careful, I'm ruthless, and I protect what's mine absolutely." He kissed my forehead, then my nose, then my lips with infinite gentleness. "No one will touch you. I promise." He left shortly after, taking a team of men who appeared from somewhere in the building. I watched from the windows as black SUVs pulled away, Jackson in the lead vehicle, and felt my stomach twist with worry. The next 3 days were torture. Jackson came home late each night, exhaustion written in every line of his body. He'd find me waiting up for him, pull me into his arms, and hold me like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. We'd go to bed tangled together, and I'd wake to find him already gone again. On the 4th day, he didn't come home at all. His texts were brief and hours apart. "Working, safe, miss you." I paced the penthouse like a caged animal, my worry mounting with each hour of silence. At 3 in the morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered with my heart in my throat. "Jesse Reynolds?" A woman's voice, cool and professional. "Yes?" "My name is Victoria Castellano. I'm calling regarding Jackson Moretti." My blood turned to ice. "Is he hurt? What happened?" "He's fine. Currently in a meeting that's running long. He asked me to check on you. Make sure you're not worrying yourself sick." There was a hint of amusement in her tone. "Are you? Who are you?" "A business associate, and a friend of sorts. Jackson and I have known each other for many years." A pause. "He talks about you constantly. It's unlike him. You must be quite special." I didn't know how to respond to that. "When is he coming home?" "By morning, I expect. The situation is resolving itself favorably." Victoria's voice softened slightly. "He's kept you very sheltered, hasn't he? From his world. He's protecting me." Is that what you think? Not cruel, just curious. Or is he protecting himself from seeing fear in your eyes when you learn what he's truly capable of? I know what he's capable of. Do you? Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You know the sanitized version, the romantic monster who saves damsels in nightclubs. But have you seen him work, Jesse? Have you watched him break a man who betrayed him? Have you witnessed what he becomes when something he values is threatened? Why are you telling me this? Because I like Jackson, and I don't want to see him destroyed by love. Her tone turned serious. You have power over him now, more than you realize. Use it wisely, or don't use it at all. Men like Jackson don't recover from betrayal by those they love. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone with 1,000 new questions crowding my mind. Jackson came home at dawn, as Victoria had predicted. I was still awake, curled up on the couch with coffee I hadn't drunk going cold in my hands. He walked in looking like he'd been through a war, his shirt stained with something dark, his knuckles split and bruised. Jesus, Jackson. I set down the coffee and went to him, reaching for his damaged hands. What happened? It's handled. His voice was rough, exhausted. The threat is neutralized. You're hurt. This is nothing. But he let me lead him to the bathroom, let me carefully clean the blood from his hands and wrap his knuckles in gauze. He watched me work with something like wonder in his eyes. You should be afraid of me right now. Why? Because you protected yourself? Protected us? Because of what I did to ensure that protection. His hand came up to cut my cheek, and I saw darkness swimming in his gaze. I'm not a good man, Jesse. Victoria probably told you that. She called, said you talk about me. A tired smile. Constantly. It annoys her. He pulled me closer, resting his forehead against mine. I can't stop thinking about you, even in the middle of negotiations, even when I should be focused on survival. You're there, in my head, in my heart. You've made me weak. That's not weakness. In my world, it is. Caring about someone gives your enemies a target. They'll come for you eventually, to hurt me through you. His arms tightened around me. I should let you go. Send you somewhere safe, somewhere far away from me and the violence that follows me. But I can't. God help me, I can't let you go. I pulled back to look at him, seeing the genuine anguish in his expression. Then don't. I'm choosing to stay, Jackson. I'm choosing you, knowing the risks. You don't know all the risks. You don't know what people in my position are capable of. So tell me. Show me. I took his damaged hands in mine. I'm not going to run from the truth. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, get dressed. There's something I need to show you. We drove through the pre-dawn city in silence, heading toward the industrial waterfront. The buildings grew more sparse, the streets emptier. Finally, we pulled up to a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside, but I could see lights through the high windows. Jackson's men were waiting, opening doors as we approached. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between an office and a fortress. Security monitors covered one wall. Men I recognized from the building stood guard at various positions. And in the center, tied to a chair, was a man I didn't recognize. His face was bruised and bloody, one eye swollen shut. When he saw Jackson, genuine terror crossed his features. This is Marcus DeLuca, Jackson said quietly, his hand resting on my lower back. He's been selling information about my operations to a rival family, information that could have gotten my people killed, that could have gotten you killed. I felt my stomach turn. Jackson, I don't need to see this. Yes, you do. Because you need to understand who I am when I'm not with you. He turned to face me fully, his expression serious. I'm giving you the chance to walk away, Jesse. Right now, before you're in too deep. Before seeing this changes how you look at me. I could have left. Should have left. But I thought about Derek. About how scared I'd been. How helpless. And I thought about Jackson's promise that I'd never feel that way again. This was the cost of that promise. This darkness was the price of my safety. I'm staying, I said. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Pride, maybe, or relief. He nodded once, then turned back to Marcus. What followed was brutal and efficient. Jackson didn't raise his voice, didn't lose control. He simply extracted every piece of information Marcus had, every contact, every transaction. And when he was satisfied he had it all, he made a phone call that sealed Marcus's fate. I didn't watch the end. Jackson walked me outside before it happened, holding me against his chest in the cool morning air, as sounds I tried not to interpret came from inside the warehouse. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said into my hair. Are you? I pulled back to look at him. Sorry for what you did, or sorry I witnessed it? Sorry you witnessed it. I'm not sorry for protecting my people, for protecting you. He deserved it? He sold information that led to the death of 3 of my men. Good men, with families. Jackson's jaw was tight. Yes. He deserved it. I should have felt horror. Should have felt disgust. But all I felt was a strange sense of security. This man would go to these lengths to protect what was his. And I was his. Take me home, I whispered. We drove back in silence, the sun rising over the city as we went. Back in the penthouse, Jackson started to pull away, to give me space to process what I'd seen. But I grabbed his hand, stopped him. Don't, I said. Don't pull away from me because you think I'll reject you now. Jesse, I saw who you are, all of it, and I'm still here. I stepped closer, pressing my palm against his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my touch. You're a monster, Jackson. But you're my monster. And I'm not afraid. The control he'd been maintaining shattered. He pulled me against him, kissing me with a desperation I'd never felt from him before. It was like he was trying to absorb me, to make me part of him so I could never leave. We made our way to the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions as we went. And for the first time since I'd moved in, he made love to me like I was precious and indestructible all at once, like he was trying to prove through touch that I'd made the right choice. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with the morning sun streaming through the windows, Jackson spoke quietly against my hair. You can't unsee what you saw today. You can't unknow what I am. I don't want to unknow it. I traced patterns on his chest, following the lines of scars I'd never asked about. I want all of you, Jackson, the good and the terrible. That's what choosing you means. His arms tightened around me. Then you're mine. Completely. Forever. Forever, I echoed, and felt the last of my old life slip away. I belonged to Jackson Moretti now, and he belonged to me. In his world of darkness and violence, we'd found something worth protecting. Each other. And I knew with absolute certainty that anyone who tried to take that away would learn exactly what we were both capable of. 3 months into living with Jackson, I began to understand the true extent of his empire. It wasn't just the penthouse, the cars, the security team that followed me everywhere. It was the way restaurant owners rushed to greet him personally, the way politicians returned his calls immediately, the way entire city blocks seemed to bend to his will. I was sitting in his office one afternoon, curled up in the leather chair by the window with a book I wasn't really reading, when I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. The shipment arrives Tuesday, Jackson said in Italian, not realizing I'd been studying the language in secret for the past month. Make sure the customs officials have been properly motivated. I don't want any delays. He continued speaking, detailing numbers that made my head spin. Millions of dollars moving through channels I didn't fully understand, but the implications were clear. This wasn't just gray area business. This was the kind of operation that could bring down empires if exposed. When he hung up, he turned to find me watching him. Something in my expression must have given away my understanding, because his eyes narrowed slightly. "How much Italian do you know?" he asked carefully. "Enough." I set down my book. "You're smuggling something big." He was silent for a long moment, weighing his options. Then he crossed the room and knelt in front of my chair, taking my hands in his. "Art. I move art and antiquities for clients who prefer discretion. Some of the pieces are legally questionable in terms of provenance. Some are outright stolen from private collections or museums." "That's insane. You could go to prison." "Only if I'm caught. And I'm very good at not getting caught." His thumb stroked circles on my palms. "I've been doing this for 10 years, Jesse. It funds everything else. The legitimate businesses, the properties, the lifestyle. And it gives me leverage over some very powerful people who collect pieces they can never display publicly." I thought about the art in the penthouse, the Monet I'd admired that first day. The paintings here. All legitimate. I would never keep hot merchandise where I live. He smiled slightly. "I'm criminal, not stupid." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked. Because I promised I'd never lie to you." He stood, pulling me up with him and into his arms. "And because you're going to be more involved in my life starting next week. There's a gala, a fundraiser for the mayor's re-election campaign. You'll come with me as my partner. People need to see you, to understand that you're under my protection." My heart skipped. "You want me to meet your world." "I want my world to meet you, to see what I see when I look at you." His hand came up to cup my face. "You're my weakness, Jesse, but you're also my strength. Having you beside me makes me better, sharper, more focused on building something that lasts instead of just surviving day to day." The gala was held at a museum, ironic given what I now knew about Jackson's business. I wore a dress he'd chosen, deep emerald green that hugged every curve and made me feel like someone I barely recognized. Diamonds I refused to think about the cost of sparkled at my throat and wrists. Jackson was devastating in a tuxedo, his hand possessive on my lower back as we entered the grand hall. Heads turned immediately. I felt the weight of dozens of stares, assessing, judging, calculating what my presence beside Jackson Moretti meant. "They're all looking at us," I whispered. "They're looking at you, trying to figure out who you are and how to use you." His lips brushed my ear. "Don't let them intimidate you. You're mine, which makes you untouchable. They know it." The evening was a masterclass in power dynamics. Jackson introduced me to senators, CEOs, socialites whose names I recognized from gossip columns. Each interaction was carefully choreographed, his hand never leaving my body, his attention constantly returning to me even mid-conversation. "You're very good at this," a woman's voice said behind me during a brief moment when Jackson was pulled away to speak with the mayor. I turned to find an elegant blonde in a white gown, her smile sharp as a knife. "At what?" "Playing the ingénue, the innocent caught in the big bad wolf's clutches." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Victoria Castellano. We spoke on the phone." Recognition hit me. This was the woman who'd called during Jackson's absence, who'd warned me about the power I held over him. In person, she was stunning and terrifying in equal measure. "You're younger than I expected," Victoria continued, studying me like I was a puzzle to solve, and clearly more resilient than Jackson's usual type. "He has a type?" "Had, past tense." She took a sip of champagne, her eyes never leaving my face. "Beautiful but empty vessels he could control completely. You're different. You have a spine." I wasn't sure at first if that would be good for him or destroy him entirely. And now? Now I think you might actually be his salvation. Victoria's expression softened marginally. He's been different since you. More strategic, less reckless. He used to take risks that would make my blood run cold. Now he calculates every move based on how it affects you. It's made him vulnerable, but also more dangerous. I don't understand. Men with nothing to lose are unpredictable. But men fighting to protect what they love, they're absolutely ruthless. She glanced across the room to where Jackson was still speaking with the mayor, though his eyes kept finding me. Anyone who threatens you now threatens the one thing he values above his own life. That makes you the most protected person in this city, and the most valuable target. A chill ran down my spine. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you, because sooner or later, someone will try to use you against him, and you need to be ready for what that means, what he'll do in response. Victoria set down her champagne glass. Jackson Moretti in love is the most dangerous version of himself that's ever existed. I hope you're ready for that responsibility. Before I could respond, Jackson appeared at my side, his hand immediately finding its place on my waist. Victoria, are you terrorizing my girlfriend? Just getting to know her. She's delightful. Victoria's smile turned genuine. Take care of her, Jackson. She's good for you. I know. His arm tightened around me. That's why I'll burn down this entire city before I let anything happen to her. He said it casually, but I knew he meant every word. Victoria seemed to know it too, because she nodded approvingly before gliding away into the crowd. What did she say to you? Jackson asked, leading me toward the balcony for fresh air. That you're dangerous when you're in love. She's not wrong. We stepped outside, the cool night air a relief after the stuffy ballroom. The city spread out below us, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. Does that frighten you? It should. I leaned against the railing, and Jackson moved behind me, his arms bracketing me in. But somehow it doesn't. Is that wrong? That I find your obsession romantic instead of terrifying? If it's wrong, then we're both damned. His lips found the curve of my neck, and I shivered. Because I am obsessed, Jesse. Completely. You're the first thought I have every morning, and the last one before I sleep. I make decisions based on how they'll affect you. I've restructured my entire operation to minimize your risk of exposure. Victoria said I make you vulnerable. You do. You're my one weakness. The only leverage anyone could possibly use against me. His arms tightened around me. But you're also my greatest strength. Before you, I was just surviving, building power for the sake of power. Now I have a reason. Everything I do is to build a world where you're safe, where you can be happy. I turned in his arms, looking up at his face illuminated by the lights from the ballroom. What if I told you I don't need a whole world? What if I just need you? Then you'd have me, forever. Completely. In every way that matters. He bent down, his forehead resting against mine. I love you, Jesse. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd run. Afraid you'd use it against me. But I don't care anymore. I love you more than power, more than money, more than my own life. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. Don't be terrified. Be certain. He kissed me softly, reverently. Be certain that I will never let anyone hurt you. Be certain that you're the only thing in this world I truly value. Be certain that loving me might be dangerous, but being loved by me is the safest place you could possibly be. The moment was shattered by the sound of breaking glass from inside the ballroom. Jackson immediately shifted, his body becoming a shield between me and the doors. His hand moved to the small of his back where I knew he kept a gun, though I'd never actually seen him draw it. One of his security team rushed onto the balcony. "Boss, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Jackson's voice was ice. "Someone tried to spike Miss Reynolds' drink. The waitress caught it, but whoever did it is still in the building." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I felt Jackson's entire body go rigid, and when I looked at his face, I barely recognized the man I loved. This was the monster from the warehouse, the ruthless criminal Victoria had warned me about. "Lock down every exit," he said quietly, but there was murder in his tone. "No one leaves until I find out who did this. And when I find them..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Within minutes, the gala had transformed into something else. Security flooded the building, politely but firmly informing guests that there had been a security threat, and everyone needed to remain for questioning. The mayor looked furious until Jackson spoke to him privately, and then he simply looked pale. I was whisked away to a private room with a female security guard who checked me over thoroughly, making sure I hadn't ingested anything dangerous. Jackson appeared every few minutes, his eyes wild with barely controlled rage, touching my face or my hand like he needed to confirm I was real and unharmed. It took an hour, but they found him. A waiter, paid by someone to slip something into my drink. Not poison, the interrogation revealed, but a sedative. Someone had planned to take me when I was unconscious. I didn't see what Jackson did to the waiter. Didn't want to see, but when he returned to me, his knuckles were bloody again, and his eyes had that distant look that meant he'd done something terrible. "Who paid him?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "The DeLuca family. Marcus's brother, seeking revenge." Jackson pulled me against him, and I could feel him shaking with residual fury. "He thought he could take you from me. Thought he could hurt me through you. What are you going to do?" "End them. Completely. Every last member of the DeLuca family will understand what happens when someone threatens what's mine." He pulled back to look at me, and his eyes were pleading despite the violence promised in his words. "I need you to go home. Now, with a full security team. I need to know you're safe while I handle this. Jackson, please, Jesse, please. I can't think straight when you're in danger. I can't be strategic. I just want to kill everyone in this building until I'm certain the threat is eliminated." His hands framed my face desperately. "Let me take you home. Let me make sure you're protected. Then let me do what I need to do to make sure this never happens again." I saw it then, the depth of his obsession. He wasn't exaggerating. He really would kill everyone here if he thought it would keep me safe. The power I held over him was terrifying and intoxicating all at once. "Okay," I whispered. "Take me home." The drive back was tense, 3 SUVs surrounding Jackson's car in a protective formation. He held my hand the entire time, his grip almost painful, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. Back at the penthouse, he checked every room personally before allowing me inside. Then he pulled me into his arms and just held me, his face buried in my hair, his breathing ragged. "I almost lost you tonight," he said against my skin. "If that waitress hadn't been alert, if they'd succeeded in taking you." But they didn't. This time. But there will be others, Jesse. As long as you're with me, there will always be people who try to use you as leverage. I can't make you completely safe. I can only make the consequences for threatening you so severe that most people won't dare try. I pulled back to look at him, seeing the anguish in his eyes. "Are you asking me to leave? For my own safety?" "No." The word was immediate, fierce. "I'm too selfish for that. I'm telling you that I will destroy anyone who threatens you. I will burn down families, ruin empires, paint this city red if that's what it takes to keep you safe. And I need you to be okay with that. With what loving me means." I thought about the life I'd had before him. The fear, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. Then I thought about these past 3 months. Being seen, being cherished, being protected so fiercely that entire families would fall for threatening me. I'm okay with it, I said. I'm okay with all of it. Because loving you means never being afraid again. And that's worth everything. He kissed me then, desperate and claiming. And I knew that we'd crossed a point of no return. I wasn't just his anymore. I was part of his world, part of his darkness, complicit in everything he did in my name. And I didn't regret it for a second. That night, as I lay wrapped in his arms, I heard him make phone calls in Italian, ordering his men, planning his revenge. I heard the violence promised in his tone, felt the tension in his body as he strategized. And I held him tighter, this beautiful monster who loved me enough to become even more monstrous. Because that's what we were now. 2 people so entwined that his darkness had become mine, and my light had become his only salvation. The DeLuca family would fall, and I would let it happen, would maybe even be glad for it. Because they'd tried to take me away from the one person who made me feel whole. That was the moment I realized I'd truly capitulated. Not to Jackson's control, but to the reality of loving someone like him. To be loved by a monster meant accepting that he'd do monstrous things in your name. And I was done pretending I wanted anything less. The war with the DeLuca family lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of Jackson coming home at dawn with blood on his hands and exhaustion in his eyes. 3 weeks of me pretending not to hear the phone calls, not to notice when members of his security team didn't return. 3 weeks of understanding exactly what it meant to be loved by someone who would tear the world apart to keep you safe. I stopped asking questions after the first few days, stopped trying to maintain the illusion that I was somehow separate from the violence enacted in my name. Instead, I became his refuge. The place he came to remember why he was fighting, what he was protecting. On the morning of day 22, Jackson came home different. Still tired, still carrying the weight of what he'd done, but something had shifted. There was finality in his expression, a sense of completion. "It's over," he said simply, pulling me into his arms in the early morning light. "The DeLucas are finished. Every single one who posed a threat is gone. The others have fled the city or bent the knee." I should have felt horror at the casual way he announced the destruction of an entire family. Instead, I felt only relief. "You're safe now?" "We're safe now." He pulled back to look at me, his hands framing my face with infinite gentleness. "No one will threaten you again. I've made sure of it. The message has been sent clearly enough that even my enemy's enemies understand what happens when someone tries to use you against me." "How many?" I asked quietly. "How many people died because of me?" "Not because of you. Because of their own choices." His thumb stroked my cheekbone. "They chose to threaten you. They chose to ignore the warnings. They chose their own fate. You're innocent in all of this, Jesse. Don't carry guilt that isn't yours." But I did carry it. At least a little. How could I not? People were dead because someone had tried to drug me at a gala. An entire family had been eliminated because they'd sought revenge for something Jackson had done to protect his empire. The weight of it was crushing until Jackson did something I never expected. He took me to meet his people, not the soldiers or the security team. The civilians who worked in his legitimate businesses, who depended on him for their livelihoods. The restaurant owners whose establishments he'd saved from bankruptcy. The families of his fallen men, who he supported financially and protected fiercely. The neighborhood where he'd grown up, where his money had built parks and community centers. "You think I'm just a criminal," he said as we walked through streets where children played and people greeted him warmly. "But this is also who I am. These are the people I protect, the reason I do what I do." An older woman approached us, her eyes bright with tears. She grabbed Jackson's hand and spoke rapidly in Italian, gesturing to me with obvious approval. When she left, Jackson was smiling slightly. "What did she say?" I asked. That she's glad I finally found someone who makes me smile like my mother used to make my father smile. She says you're good for my soul. He laced his fingers through mine. She's right. You are. We visited a small restaurant that evening. Not one of Jackson's high-end properties, but a family place that had been there for 50 years. The owner, an ancient man named Giuseppe, embraced Jackson like a son. "This is my Jessie," Jackson said in English, his hand protective on my back, "the woman I'm going to marry." My heart stopped. We'd never discussed marriage, never even used the word. But Giuseppe was beaming, pulling me into a hug that smelled like garlic and tomatoes and home. "About time," Giuseppe said in heavily accented English. "This one, he needs someone to fight for. Someone to come home to. You give him that, yes?" "Yes," I managed, still reeling from Jackson's casual announcement. Over dinner, homemade pasta that melted on my tongue, Giuseppe told stories of Jackson as a teenager, how he'd worked in this very kitchen after his parents died, how he'd protected other kids in the neighborhood from gangs and dealers, how he'd built his empire not just for power, but to create safety for people who had none. "He is not perfect," Giuseppe said seriously, looking at me with wise old eyes. "He has done dark things, but always for reason, to protect, to provide, never for cruelty alone." On the drive home, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind all evening. "Did you mean it? About marriage?" Jackson's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Every word. I should have asked you properly with a ring and romance. But the truth just came out. Because that's what you are to me, Jessie. My future. My wife. The mother of my children someday, if you want that." Children. I'd never let myself think that far ahead. Is that so surprising? I'm building an empire, Kara. I need an heir. But more than that, I want to see you pregnant with my child. Want to watch you grow round with our baby. Want to build a family with you that's nothing like the one I lost. The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. That's a lot of pressure. It's a promise. A future. If you want it. He glanced at me, vulnerability showing through his usual confidence. "Tell me you want it. Tell me you want forever with me. Marriage and children and growing old together. Tell me I'm not alone in wanting to build something permanent." "I want it," I whispered. "God help me. I want all of it." He pulled the car over abruptly, right there on the side of the road, and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm going to do this properly," he said. "I'm going to get you the most beautiful ring in the world. I'm going to plan a proposal that makes you cry happy tears. I'm going to give you the wedding you deserve. But right now, in this car, I need you to know that you're already my wife, in every way that matters. My heart, my soul, my reason for existing. Do you understand?" I understand. And I did. This wasn't a traditional love story. We didn't have the luxury of slow and steady. We had intensity and obsession, and a love so consuming it bordered on madness. But it was ours. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Jackson proposed properly. He took me back to the club where we'd met, which he'd rented out entirely for the night. The VIP section where I'd first kissed him was filled with flowers, thousands of roses in deep red. He got down on one knee, this powerful man who made entire families tremble, and offered me a ring that probably cost more than most houses. Emerald cut diamond, flawless and enormous, set in platinum with smaller diamonds creating a pattern that looked like vines wrapping around my finger. "Jessie," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "From the moment you chose me in desperation, I've spent every day proving you made the right choice. I want to spend the rest of my life continuing that proof. Marry me. Be my wife, my partner, my everything. Let me love you and protect you and worship you, until my last breath. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The wedding happened 2 months after that, small and private despite Jackson's wealth. Just his closest people and Maya, who cried through the entire ceremony. We married in the garden of his estate outside the city, a property I hadn't known existed until he brought me there to see our future home. It was beautiful and isolated, surrounded by walls and security, but feeling open and free inside the perimeter. Gardens where children could play safely, rooms that could become nurseries. A life that felt possible despite the darkness that would always shadow Jackson's business. Victoria was there, elegant in champagne silk, and she pulled me aside before the ceremony. "I was wrong about you," she said simply. "I thought you'd either break him or be broken by him. But you've done something I never expected. You've made him want to be better while accepting everything he is. That's rare, Jessie. Don't ever underestimate its value." "I won't." "Good, because he'd destroy the world for you. Make sure he never has to." The ceremony was simple, our vows personal and raw. Jackson promised to love me fiercely, protect me absolutely, and devote every day to my happiness. I promised to stand beside him in darkness and light, to be his haven and his home, to love him despite and because of everything he was. When he kissed me as my husband, I tasted salt and realized he was crying. This dangerous, powerful man was crying because I'd chosen to spend my life with him. Our wedding night was tender and consuming. Jackson making love to me like I was the most precious thing in the world, and in his world, I was. 6 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. I'd suspected for weeks, my body changing in subtle ways that I'd noticed but hadn't quite acknowledged. When the test came back positive, I sat on the bathroom floor of our estate and cried, overwhelmed by joy and terror in equal measure. Jackson found me there, still holding the test, tears streaming down my face. "Kara, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" I held up the test wordlessly. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sank to the floor beside me, pulled me into his lap, and buried his face in my hair. His shoulders shook, and I realized he was crying too. "We're having a baby," he said against my skin, his voice thick with emotion. "You're giving me a family again. Jessie, He couldn't finish, overcome. "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if something happens? What if you're enemies? Nothing will happen." He pulled back to look at me, his eyes fierce and wet. "I will protect you and our child with everything I have. No one will touch either of you. I swear it on my life." He kept that promise. The security around me doubled, then tripled. Jackson became almost obsessive about my safety, tracking my every movement, ensuring I had guards even inside our estate. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like love in its purest form. My pregnancy was smooth, easy even. Jackson was there for every appointment, every milestone. He talked to my growing belly at night, promising our child a life of safety and love, promising to be better than his own father, to build something lasting. When our daughter was born on a snowy February morning, tiny and perfect and screaming with healthy lungs, Jackson held her and wept openly. "Isabella," he said, naming her after his mother. "My beautiful Isabella." Looking at him holding our daughter, this monster who'd killed for me, who'd destroyed families and built empires all in the name of protecting what was his, I finally understood what I'd truly chosen that night in the club. I'd chosen a love that was absolute and consuming. A love that would destroy anything that threatened it. A love that came with darkness, but offered a depth of devotion most people never experienced. And I'd choose it again. Every single time. Because being loved by Jackson Moretti meant never being afraid. It meant being worshipped and protected and cherished beyond reason. It meant our daughter would grow up safe, shielded by a father who would move heaven and earth to ensure her happiness. Yes, there would always be danger. Yes, there would always be violence in the shadows. But in the circle of Jackson's arms, with our daughter between us, I felt only peace. "Thank you," Jackson whispered that first night, Isabella sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside our bed. "For choosing me. For staying. For giving me everything I never thought I'd have. Thank you for fighting for me, for showing me what it means to be truly loved." I kissed him softly. "For being my monster." He smiled against my lips. "Your monster. Always." And as I drifted off to sleep in our home, surrounded by security and safety, and the family we'd built from desperation and obsession, I knew I'd found something precious. Not perfect. Never perfect. But ours. The girl who'd grabbed a stranger in a moment of panic had found her forever. And the man who'd claimed her on instinct had found his purpose. We'd both been broken in our own ways. But together, we'd become something unbreakable. That was our story. Not traditional, not gentle, but absolutely ours. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it.